If the media is anything to go by, this is a common fare. But the opposition's strongest card remains Jacob Zuma and the cloud hanging over his head.
PM Live on SAFM.
In the headlines, DA leader Helen Zille may approach the Constitutional Court if there is a cover-up in the corruption case of Jacob Zuma.
The ANC has to do something to clear Zuma's name before the election, and here it comes.
Sorry, I see Business Day this morning carrying a front-page lead saying the Zuma team has various taped conversations underlining their view that there was political interference in his case.
In the midst of this furor, we got a call from ANC headquarters, and now we're on our way to a luxury hotel in the bush to see Zuma. We were hoping for a scoop about the spy tapes, but Zuma wasn't having any of it. In that respect, our interview was over very quickly. In interest of clarity, there's a question I must pose to you. I understand that your legal team recently submitted some important new evidence to the prosecuting authorities. Can you tell us about this?
No, I can't tell you because that, as you know, that's a business of the lawyers who made the submissions.
I mean, most analysts in South Africa feel that these charges that have dogged your life for the last 7-8 years are about to be withdrawn against you. The trouble is that this might be a Pyrrhic victory because there's a certain kind, if these things just go away, there's a certain kind of cynic who's still going to continue to believe that you're guilty. How do you clear your name?
Well, that I can't do anything about. The fact of the matter is not I'm not guilty.
And that was about it for the day's burning issues. We spent the rest of the interview chatting about Zulu culture. Previous ANC leaders have tended to come from a westernized, Christianized elite. Thabo Mbeki, for example, grew up under the hand of a mother who used to warn him that if he neglected his schoolwork, he would wind up like these people, by which she meant the uneducated peasants. Zuma, on the other hand, is unabashedly fond of all things African, and when he speaks to the rural masses, he sounds entirely unlike any previous ANC leader. The ANC has always spoken the language of the left, to the modern left, but when you're speaking, especially to local audiences, a different sound sometimes emerges. You say, for example, that you feel there's too much nudity and sex on television. You say children should be brought up to fear God and respect their elders. And you've even at times hinted at that you'd consider restoration of the death penalty. Now, what do you say to sort of westernized liberals who get uncomfortable about these ideas?
I think it's an old problem. It's an old problem that Westerners looked at us differently. I don't think that has changed. That's my problem. For an example, they believed that if you exercise what is your culture, you are backward.
Zuma doesn't give a damn about looking backward. He's openly polygamous, openly proud of who he is and the way he was raised.
It was absolutely wonderful. I was looking after cattle. That is what I did best. We learned swimming in the big rivers. We walked in the bushes, in the mountains and met snakes. As a boy, you needed to know how to get out of trouble. We fought little faction fighting with the boys of the other areas. What we call in Zulu, the man making. That's where a warrior is made. That's when boys distinguish themselves.
And what did you learn from them, from those traditional Zulu cultural values? What are the lessons that you learned that are still valuable to you today?
Firstly, the level of teaching of respect was deep. To respect others, to respect the elders, how to do things that men ought to do. But critical taught bravery, as a man must be brave. And there must nothing that must defeat you, or you must always be victorious in what you do. In other words, real fundamental teachings of a warrior.
The Zulus are known throughout Africa for their warlike reputation, which rests in large part on the conquests of King Shaka, whose armies laid waste to half the subcontinent 2 centuries ago. The memory lives on in the modern Zulu imagination. Perhaps Zuma's enemies should have considered this before taking him on.
Chris Gibbons with the Midday Report.
It has been a week of speculation and rumour, intrigue and headlines in the Jacob Zuma case. The NPA continues.
We're on our way to see someone who's been in the thick of this battle for years. Vusi Pikoli is a former head of the National Prosecutorial Authority, or NPA. He's also the man who first laid charges against Jacob Zuma.
I first took the decision to prosecute way back in June 2005. At the time, I was convinced that there was a case to be answered.
As a result of that decision, Pokoli was widely reviled as an Mbeki stooge, but its critics fell silent 2 years later when he was fired for defying Mbeki on an unrelated matter. So in other words, you come across as this when you've got wounds from both sides, haven't you?
Well, perhaps but it's...
You got bullet holes all over you.
It's a high price to pay for independence, I suppose, because I regard the independence of prosecutors as one of our cornerstones of our democracy.
In short, Pokoli is uniquely positioned to address the questions we're all presently obsessed with. Did you fabricate evidence against Jacob Zuma?
It's unthinkable that I can ever do that.
Okay then, but why are they talking about dropping the charges?
If these tapes do exist, and if the newspapers are reporting correctly about now the content of those tapes, it's a question of the role played by the former president, who was said to have had discussions with the prosecutors which might have then influenced their decision either way. But I don't want to comment on that because I don't know the truth. I don't know whether those tapes exist.
If prosecutors are seen to be caving into political pressure, what would be the consequences?
That would be disastrous for the country. That would be catastrophic. I mean, I'm using those words, advisedly.
Catastrophic.
Catastrophic. Because, I mean, look, the entire criminal justice system, will really be destroyed. You want to create a situation that says that all is equal before the law. This is the essence of democracy.
Making headlines, it's bated breath for the NPA's Zuma announcement.
Stephen, really, there's only one big election story today, and that's what happens with the NPA, isn't it?
That's all everyone wants to talk about is today's announcement. It really changes the complete tone of these election campaigns. It's fascinating stuff.
From Al Jazeera, we're going to the NPA for the press conference. Thanks very much. The moment of truth has finally come. Half the country thinks Zuma is about to be let off because prosecutors are too scared to stand up to him or his party. The other half thinks a diabolical plot is about to be exposed. The stakes couldn't possibly be higher. The man of the moment is Mokotedi Mshe, acting head of the NPA.
I stand before you today to announce the most difficult decision I ever made in my life. The painful facts that I'm about to put before you have serious implications for the integrity.
Mshe went on to unveil the famous spy tapes, which were apparently given to Zuma's lawyers by a sympathetic secret agent. They showed that this man, head of the agency investigating Zuma, was taking orders from this man, a millionaire businessman known to be one of Thabo Mbeki's closest associates. The spy recordings fell short of proving that Zuma was framed, but they did show that an outsider was manipulating the timing of Zuma's court appearances to make sure that they suited Mbeki's political agenda. As far as Mshe was concerned, that was fatal.
In the light of the above, I have come to the difficult conclusion that it is neither possible nor desirable for the NPA to continue with the prosecution of Mrs. Zuma.
It was, oddly, a decision that suited almost everyone. The ANC claimed its hero had been vindicated, opposition leaders were given a new campaign issue, and I wound up, as usual, not knowing what to think. You know, there's something that should be said here. All this goes back to the day when a legion of European arms dealers turned up on our shores, eager to do business with the ANC. In the process, faceless ANC leaders and their business cronies pocketed around $100 million in under-the-table commissions. Even if all the charges against Jacob Zuma had turned out to be true, and now we'll never know, he received a minuscule 0.04% of the total, and yet he was the only one investigated. So yes, there was definitely something curious about that prosecution, but it doesn't automatically follow that he was innocent.
What we have seen here today is a show trial using a press conference as if it's a court of law. We are not leaving this issue here.
So who knows, this controversy might yet return to haunt us. But for the moment, it's over. The Zuma investigation poisoned our politics for 8 years, turned brother against brother, and darkened our world to such an extent that some couldn't see the road ahead anymore. Despite all this, Jacob Zuma did become the president of South Africa in April 2009. Clearly he's facing huge challenges, but I'd like to think he's sincere when he says he'll be guided by what's good in the ancient culture of Africa. If not, we might just have to rely on divine intervention. And if that doesn't work, we shouldn't forget that once, not very long ago, there was a good reason why we were considered a light unto nations.
We are a decent people. We do have values. We do care for each other. There is within the South African spirit an indomitable quality. You know, nothing has beaten us yet, and even these buggers aren't going to beat us.